Just when it looked like this entire Hollywood courtroom saga was finally reaching its final chapter, another unexpected twist pulled everyone right back in. And honestly, at this stage, nothing about this story surprises me anymore. We're well over a year into the fallout surrounding the "It Ends With Us" controversy, and somehow the headlines keep coming. Every time people think the drama has finally cooled down, another filing appears, another hearing gets scheduled, and another legal argument drags everyone back into the conversation. So settle in, because what happened inside that courtroom may have been one of the most revealing moments we've seen yet. To understand why, we need to look at where things stand right now. The lawsuit itself is over. The settlement happened. The trial that everyone spent months talking about never took place. After repeated promises that the case would be fought publicly, after all the discussions about evidence, testimony, accountability, and telling the full story, the matter was resolved before any jury ever heard it. Yet despite all of that, one battle remains alive. One final issue. One final request. One final legal gamble. And that centers entirely around California Civil Code Section 47.1. That's the piece Blake's team continues to pursue. Everything now revolves around that statute, which is exactly why today's hearing carried so much significance. Here's the part that keeps raising eyebrows. If the primary objective was obtaining reimbursement for legal expenses, there was a fairly straightforward opportunity to address that during settlement negotiations. Both sides were already at the table. Numbers were being discussed. Terms were being finalized. The case was ending. So naturally people started asking a simple question. Why wasn't the issue resolved there? Why conclude nearly every aspect of the dispute, and then immediately launch a separate effort seeking expanded damages under a California law in a federal New York courtroom? Especially when the underlying production at the center of the dispute took place elsewhere. The legal geography alone has become one of the biggest talking points. And the financial request itself only adds to the intrigue, because this isn't merely about attorney fees. The request stretches much further. Treble damages, punitive damages, additional financial remedies. The potential recovery being discussed is dramatically larger than simple reimbursement, which is why today's courtroom exchange attracted so much attention. According to reports, Blake's legal team essentially argued that the necessary burden had already been satisfied, and that the remaining task was determining the amount owed. That position immediately triggered questions. Serious questions. At one point, Judge Lyman reportedly repeated a phrase that seemed to capture the issue perfectly. Without a jury trial. The wording alone suggested skepticism. And honestly, it's easy to understand why. Because once the settlement occurred, certain things disappeared along with it. No jury findings. No expert testimony. No damages phase. No formal determination regarding the extent of any alleged harm. Those are often the very mechanisms courts rely on when evaluating substantial financial awards. Yet now the court is being asked to address damages without the process that typically establishes them. That's the tension sitting at the center of this entire dispute. And it seemed to hover over the courtroom throughout the hearing. The judge's questions reportedly became increasingly direct, increasingly focused, increasingly difficult to ignore. One question in particular stood out. Is your client damaged? Simple, short, but incredibly important, because over the past several months, Blake has remained highly visible publicly. Major events, public appearances, industry gatherings, magazine features, film promotion, red carpets, high-profile invitations, public recognition. The record reflects a person who has continued appearing in some of the entertainment industry's most visible spaces. That reality doesn't automatically answer legal questions about damages, but it does create a conversation. And Judge Lyman appeared interested in that conversation, especially when arguments involving reputational harm and lost opportunities entered the discussion. Before today's hearing even began, both sides had already submitted written letters outlining their positions, and those filings offered an early glimpse into the arguments that would later unfold in court. What immediately stood out was how differently each side approached the burden of proof issue. Blake's filing acknowledged that the party invoking the protection bears responsibility for establishing certain elements of the claim. Reasonable enough. But as observers examined the document more closely, questions emerged about how that burden was being framed and whether portions of the argument appeared to shift responsibility elsewhere. It was a subtle issue, but an important one. And given Judge Lyman's reputation for detail-oriented analysis, many assumed he would notice. He did. Meanwhile, Baldoni's team approached the issue from an entirely different angle. Their argument focused on the settlement itself. The core message was straightforward. The case ended. The claims were resolved. The trial never occurred. And by agreeing to that resolution, certain opportunities that would have existed during litigation disappeared along with it. Which brings us back to the central mystery that still hangs over everything. Can Blake successfully use Section 47.1 in the way her team is proposing? Or did the settlement close the very door they're now trying to reopen? That's the question sitting in front of Judge Lyman. And based on the intensity of today's hearing, it's a question that may determine how this entire saga is ultimately remembered. And that's where the entire argument starts running into a wall. Because at the center of all this is one unavoidable problem. The process that would normally establish damages no longer exists. The trial is gone. The jury is gone. The witnesses are gone. The expert testimony is gone. Those pieces disappeared the moment the settlement happened. Yet despite that, Blake's team is still pursuing remedies that traditionally depend on those very mechanisms. And that's exactly what Baldoni's lawyers hammered home. Their position was surprisingly simple. You can't bypass the process and then ask for the outcome anyway. You can't skip over the phase where evidence gets tested, where experts quantify damages, where jurors make factual findings, and then arrive afterward asking the court to fill in the blanks. That's not how the system normally works. And according to Baldoni's side, that's precisely the problem. They argued that before anyone can even start discussing treble damages, there must first be a compensatory damage award. Not a hypothetical one, an actual one, a concrete determination supported by findings of fact. Traditionally that means a jury, but there was no jury, no verdict, no trial, which leaves a very obvious question hanging over the entire case. Where exactly is this damage award supposed to come from? The issue becomes even more complicated once you realize how little precedent exists. Section 47.1 is still relatively new territory. Very few courts have interpreted it. Even fewer federal courts have dealt with it. And almost nobody has attempted to use it in circumstances quite like these. Which effectively places Judge Lyman in an unusual position. He's not simply applying well-established law. He's being asked to chart a path through territory where very few maps exist. That's a significant responsibility. Because whatever decision emerges here could influence future cases long after this dispute is forgotten. And from the tone of the hearing, it didn't sound like the judge was eager to stretch the law beyond its current boundaries. As the arguments unfolded, Judge Lyman reportedly kept returning to the same concern. He wasn't accepting conclusions. He wanted explanations, detailed ones. Every time Blake's attorney attempted to move forward, another question seemed to appear. Another obstacle. Another issue demanding clarification. One of the most important moments centered around Rule 54 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. That's the framework courts typically use when attorney fee requests arise after litigation ends. Judge Lyman reportedly wanted a clear answer. How does this request fit within Rule 54? How does the legal structure actually work? And from multiple accounts, the response didn't completely satisfy the court. The argument relied heavily on legislative intent. The idea that California lawmakers envisioned the statute operating this way. The idea that burdens should shift. The idea that certain damages become available once specific conditions are met. But Judge Lyman kept digging deeper. Intent wasn't enough. He wanted legal mechanics. And that's when the constitutional questions started entering the conversation. The judge reportedly raised concerns involving free speech protections, questions about fairness, questions about whether certain claims could be treated differently depending on who was bringing them. And then came what may have been the most significant issue of all: the Seventh Amendment, the right to a jury trial. Because once you start talking about significant damages being awarded solely by a judge, without jurors ever hearing evidence, constitutional concerns become difficult to ignore. That's serious territory, the type of issue judges tend to take extremely seriously. And according to observers in the room, the response from Blake's side didn't completely eliminate those concerns. If anything, the exchange seemed to highlight just how many unanswered questions still remain. Meanwhile, Baldoni's attorney approached the podium with a noticeably different strategy. Rather than focusing on broad theories, she pointed to actual authority. One particular case kept surfacing during the discussion: a recent decision that touched on Section 47.1 and offered one of the only available roadmaps for interpreting the statute. And the comparison created another problem. Because in situations where similar laws provide extraordinary remedies, there are often separate procedures built into the system: special hearings, additional claims, structured evidentiary processes, mechanisms designed to establish facts before damages are awarded. According to Baldoni's side, none of those mechanisms exist here. And because the larger litigation ended through settlement, many of the tools normally used to evaluate damages disappeared with it. No experts, no evidentiary hearings, no testimony, no record establishing specific losses, which led to a question that kept resurfacing throughout the hearing. If damages are being requested, what evidence will be used to calculate them? What foundation exists? What numbers will the court rely upon? At one point, Baldoni's attorney reportedly reminded the court that Blake's own side had previously indicated expert testimony would play a role in proving damages. Now there are no experts, no testimony, no opportunity to build that record. So where does the proof come from? And then came what many observers viewed as the most revealing moment of the day. Judge Lyman turned toward Blake's attorney and made a comment that instantly caught everyone's attention. "Your client has the ability to end this." The statement wasn't presented as an instruction. It wasn't an order. The judge made that clear. But the message was difficult to miss. There was another path available. Simpler one. A narrower request. A more limited claim focused on attorney fees rather than pursuing every possible category of damages. That option existed. And yet Blake's team chose not to take it. They continued pushing forward. Continued seeking the broader remedies. Continued asking the court to embrace the larger interpretation. And with that, the hearing came to an end. No ruling. No immediate answer. No dramatic conclusion. Instead, Judge Lyman took the matter under advisement. Now the entire case enters a waiting period. A period where every argument has been made, every question has been asked, and every theory has been placed on the table. All that's left is the decision. And that observation may have revealed the biggest weakness in Blake's entire strategy. Because according to Baldoni's team, the fundamental problem isn't about the amount of money being requested. It's about the missing path needed to get there. They argued that once Blake voluntarily dismissed her claims and agreed to settle the larger dispute, she also surrendered the legal machinery that would normally be required to pursue punitive and treble damages. And that's a massive issue. Because those damages don't just appear out of thin air. They require proof. They require findings. They require a process. The kind of process that unfolds during a trial. The kind of process that no longer exists here. That's why Baldoni's attorneys kept returning to the same point. Without a trial, without testimony, without expert witnesses, and without a jury, how exactly is Blake supposed to establish the factual foundation necessary for the extraordinary remedies she's seeking? It's a question that seemed to linger over the entire hearing. And nobody appeared to have an easy answer. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, Blake's PR attorney, Sigrid McCauley, was busy presenting a very different picture. She spoke confidently about advocacy. She talked about empowerment. She described Section 47.1 as an important tool for protecting people who come forward. And she emphasized that Blake intends to continue moving forward with strength and purpose regardless of the outcome. But then came the question everyone wanted answered. The question that reporters have been asking for months. If Blake wanted her day in court so badly, what changed? Why settle? Why step away from the trial after repeatedly signaling that a public courtroom battle was the ultimate goal? The response wasn't exactly definitive. Instead, the explanation focused on the idea that pursuing damages under Section 47.1 was, in a sense, another form of having that day in court. But for many observers, that comparison didn't quite land. Because there is a significant difference between standing before a jury, presenting evidence, and allowing witnesses to be examined, versus arguing a post-settlement legal motion. They're entirely different experiences, entirely different stakes, entirely different processes. And for many people who followed this case from the beginning, that distinction matters. A lot of observers expected answers. They expected evidence to be challenged publicly. They expected testimony. They expected clarity. Instead, the trial vanished. The anticipated courtroom showdown never arrived. And what replaced it was a settlement followed by another legal fight centered on damages. That's why so many people still feel like the story remains unfinished. Then the conversation shifted toward Justin Baldoni. And what his attorney, Brian Friedman, said outside the courthouse carried a noticeably different tone. Rather than focusing on legal technicalities, he spoke about personal consequences, about what it feels like to spend months under a microscope, about the damage that can occur when accusations dominate headlines before facts are fully examined. Friedman described the experience as something that can shake a person's confidence, challenge their sense of identity, and leave lasting scars. And whether people agree with him or not, it's difficult to deny that the past year and a half has fundamentally changed the public conversation surrounding Baldoni. Before all of this began, he had built a reputation around discussions of vulnerability, masculinity, and personal growth. His public image wasn't centered solely on filmmaking. It was built around advocacy and difficult conversations. Then suddenly everything shifted. His name became attached to controversy. Every development generated another headline. Every filing generated another wave of debate. And regardless of where someone stands on the larger dispute, that level of scrutiny inevitably leaves a mark. What's particularly striking is how certain allegations evolved as more information entered the public record. Specific claims that initially generated enormous attention later became subjects of intense scrutiny themselves. Context became a recurring issue. Interpretations were challenged. Narratives were questioned. And as additional details emerged, many people found themselves re-evaluating conclusions they had previously accepted. That's one reason this case became so polarizing. The story never remained static, kept changing. Every new filing seemed to introduce another layer, another complication, another reason for people to argue over what really happened. And that brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of the entire saga: media involvement. Questions have continued to circulate regarding the timing of certain articles and the relationship between media coverage and legal strategy. Critics argue that some reporting appeared unusually synchronized with legal developments. Supporters insist that journalists were simply covering a major story. But regardless of which side people believe, the discussion has never fully gone away. In fact, it may have intensified. Because once audiences begin questioning how narratives are built, they start examining everything more closely. Timelines, the sources, the motivations, the sequence of events. And that's exactly what happened here. For many observers, the debate eventually expanded beyond Blake and Justin altogether. It became a broader conversation about influence, publicity, and the role media plays during high-profile legal battles. Who shapes the story? Who controls the narrative? Who benefits when certain details receive attention while others fade into the background? Those questions continue to hover over this case. And now, with Judge Lyman weighing the final legal issues still on the table, they're likely to remain part of the conversation for quite some time. Because while the settlement may have ended one chapter, it clearly didn't end the scrutiny. If anything, the latest courtroom showdown proved that the controversy still has unfinished business. And until Judge Lyman delivers his ruling, the uncertainty remains. For Blake, for Boldoni, and for everyone still watching this legal drama unfold.